last year, when I was in Austin, Texas, I did lots of research about Mexico. I realized that Mexico is booming, particularly in its manufacturing space. I asked all my Austin friends, do you know somebody in Mexico I can connect with? So one of my friends, who is also an angel investor and also entrepreneurs, her name is Lala. She told me that there's one guy you must meet if you want to do something with Mexico. So I went to apply to Monterey last November to join the event called MTY, which is he founded 10 years ago. He founded Mexico's very first venture capitalist about 19 years ago, called Dalus Capital. He also founded a great platform called MTY, which is one of the largest entrepreneur and innovation network in New Orleans, in North Mexico region. He's also on board of Tech Monterey, which is the #1 university in Mexico, as well as the board advisor of University of Texas, Austin branch. Please join me in a warm welcome to my friend, the guy who you must connect with. You want to do business in Mexico. Rrogelio.
Thank you, David. Let me see if I can get my slides here. So welcome everyone, and I know that I got 10 minutes, but I was able to negotiate with Thomas that he's going to give me 5 more. So bear with me, okay? And I'll try to go very quickly through this presentation. So very quickly, I started when I was studying mechanical engineer. I got introduced into the world of entrepreneurship. First through a nonprofit, a foundation that we created called Generación Empresarial Mexicana, that got me really well connected in Mexico and abroad. And immediately after that, my second stage of life is that I started building companies. I created 7 companies in the next 18 years, had 3 exits. And as I was going through the 3rd exit in 2007, a friend of mine that was running Endeavor back in Mexico, he said, you should become an Endeavor entrepreneur, so I'm not going to have a company. So I said, if I sell, I'll call you. If I don't sell, I'll call you. I ended up calling him. I helped them open offices around the country. But he seeded in me the idea of creating one of the first venture firms that would be investing in technology, early stage in Mexico and in Latin America. And I thought that I was going to launch a fund in 6 months. It took me a little bit over 2 years to raise the first fund. It was a fund 70 million in size, where most of the money was coming from Mexican investors. That was the premise that we said, if we're going to launch it, we have to bring in the captains of industry and all the resources that they represent together so that we can go through the process of learning and seeing how can we deploy capital into the region. So far we have done 50 investments. The last investment, something that Roger helped us get through the process. We have deployed close to $200 million into these 50 investments, which have attracted a lot more investment. Now we're in our 3rd fund. Now somehow we have attracted development banks, like the development bank of the US called the Development Finance Corporation, DFC. We are about to close also with JICA, the Japan International Cooperation Agency, that is investing into this asset class for the first time, as well as DFC, into Mexico and Latin America. So this is an industry that is developing. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what has happened. You all know Latin America, more or less, $6 trillion, 660 million people, very well connected, internet and mobile. Latam, when we started investing back in 2011, only $70 million were being deployed into the region. The peak was all 2021 with $16 billion, and now it has come back to a decent number of around $44.5 billion of investment. As a percentage of GDP, we're still underinvested. So just as a nutshell, so that you have an idea of what has been happening around innovation in the region. During this past decade, well, around 1,000 companies raised over $1 million. Those companies ended up creating or capturing value of $220 billion in value. They raised 28 billion, and these companies created 245,000 jobs. I can skip a little bit of this, but you can see how this started to accelerate. Basically, since 2010 and 2017, nothing was happening. It was very slow growth, and then it started to pick up, and then in 2020 to 2022, it got crazy. Now it's at a decent level, but keep in mind that 30% of the companies that were financed were in fintech and e-commerce, attracted 50% of the capital, and captured around 70% of the value. Today, that is still present and valid, but now we're seeing other areas emerging. Why fintech? I think that it was a situation that we just went through the financial crisis in 2008. Today we're seeing innovations around the health space that are very relevant and that are scaling super fast. In these 10 years, the VC companies captured $250 billion of value, early stage companies, and traditional public companies lost $500 billion of value. So the message that I want to leave with you is that Latin America is going through this digital transition as well as other regions of the world. Maybe a little bit slower, but there's a huge untapped market that can be captured. And the idea here is that if we were able to create $221 billion of value, we expect that this economy will be valued around $2 trillion by 2030. That's the whole perspective. And obviously we're on cycles. Let's see how this goes. So much for the venture industry, just contextually so that you know where we are on innovation. As you already have heard, Mexico became the biggest trading partner of the US, ahead of China and Canada. These are the US trading partners that import from each of these countries. You can see more or less the amount of money or the goods that are being transacted. 15.9% come from Mexico, then 30.1% from Canada, and 12.7% from China. Now pay attention to this graph, because now you're going to see where do these states export to, and how much do they export. I don't know if you saw California here, from 130 to 24.1 billion. Texas from 88 to 89, so it's almost balanced. But you see that there are still states that are importing from China, but now they're exporting to other countries like Mexico. But when we talk about nearshoring and manufacturing, and we're going to talk about this in the panel later today, China is huge. 4 trillion, they're 32% of the 30% of the world capacity. The US is 2.3 trillion. Mexico represents, maybe this 210 billion is a little bit outdated. We should be around 240, 250 billion right now. So keep that number in mind, because if we move the needle, we represent around 2% of the global manufacturing capacity. There's a lot of room to grow. Don't be, so what's funneling or driving this nearshoring, reshoring, offshoring, tech-shoring? What I really think is that you have to start your shoring strategy sooner rather than later if you want to be part of the equation. So you clearly have different definitions that we have come up with. Reshoring is American companies relocating assets to North America, either the US or Mexico. Nearshoring is Asian companies relocating production assets to North America. US or Mexico. Offshoring is American companies relocating or expanding operations in or to Mexico due to the lack of available talent in the US. And tech shoring, this is around new industries that are being developed. So why Mexico? It's basically two big drivers. One of them is the closeness to the US, and the second is the talent accessibility and the quality of that talent. The others might play a role, but they're not as important. Now, this is how Mexico's economy has been developing and being open to the world. In 1982, when we had one of the first financial crises, 28 billion. 1993, when NAFTA started, we were at 67 billion. Today, we're at around $500 billion. But the interesting part is that since we're more or less the same size, a little bit higher than China, the opportunity could be to double that. Obviously, we're not going to capture everything because assets are being relocated not only to North America, but also to other areas of Asia. And there are other countries in Asia that are capturing this movement. But so that was kind of insight number one. What's the size of the opportunity of what we can do? Insight number two here is access to talent. I don't know if you have been watching this closely, but there's a talent scarcity around manufacturing and STEM, even in the US. So installed capacity in the US cannot be fully exploited because they don't have the means to be able to produce that capacity. So just to give you one piece of data, in the cycle of 21 to 22, 1.9 million students graduated from the bachelor degree. We have 253,000 engineers. From now till 2030, we expect to have around 19 million people that will be part of the workforce. That you'll see a little bit further some demographic graphs that I have here. So we have around 4 to 5 million people that could go into manufacturing, and that could provide an expansion. Now, inside
how many of those are lawyers?
Lawyers?
Yeah, how many of those are lawyers?
About 2. And AI. Also. So the third insight is location. So nearshoring is not exclusive of Mexico. It's also the US. It's also other countries in Central and South America. The reality is that we're creating an economic boom. Now, within Mexico, this is what's happening. Right now, we're moving around 71 million square feet of industrial space. But if you see the top 3 or 4 or 5 locations where you see Monterrey, Mexico City, Saltillo, Juarez, Tijuana, Mexicali, and Reynosa, these are the ones that are capturing the big share of all that is happening in the market. And today, just to give you a data point, there's less than 1% of industrial real estate capacity available for new companies to go and be installed in the country. And there are some sectors where, as I was saying, obviously China has decreased its market share in some of these sectors. Mexico has been growing in some of them. It has been decreasing in some others. But there are some other Asian countries that are also growing. So this is kind of the shift of what's happening with the relocation of assets from where the US is sourcing all their reports. So there are some challenges, as we all know. Not everything is rosy. And we can see that we have to understand and maybe get ourselves to the idea that instead of doing this horizontal growth mindset, that we need to verticalize it and integrate ourselves as an economic bloc. Second, that there's infrastructure, lack of infrastructure, where you have financing, energy, water, highways, public transportation, housing, logistics, that are key to service all of the industries that are coming. And the other is that there's some talent that either has to be reskilled or the new incentives have to be put in place so that new people can be trained on new technologies and on strategic sectors. So I'm going to give you 3 quick examples of companies that we have backed that have become leaders in their spaces. This is a payments company that We see that at a $4.5 million valuation, led their Series A round. Today they're ready to do, they're in line to do an IPO in NASA. And this is a company that, when they started, the entire financial industry of Mexico have been able to service around 750,000 businesses that could accept payments with card, debit, and credit cards. Today, in less than 10 years, Flip has 600,000 businesses by themselves. So they're bigger than the top 3 banks or 4 banks together. And that gives you a sense of the type of opportunities that you can find in these emerging markets. This is a second company that is also in the financial space that does supply chain finance. This company was started by a person that helped create the Cadenas Productivas program inside NAFIN. Last year, this company financed more the private sector of Mexico than the Mexican development bank. That gives you the size of the volume of money that they mobilize and the marketplace, size of the marketplace that they have to support these companies. This is another company, the third example that I wanted to share is that this is on the AI space, industrial AI space, that they're basically working to help corporations operate all of the infrastructure projects in different sectors, but at the end it's more oriented towards using data to be able to predict and operate efficiently. So this is a vision that David has shared with us, and we will be there in less than a month. And the idea is that we might not see it right now, but we have all the ingredients and the incentives to basically integrate the south of the US and the north of Mexico into hubs that can become the references of collaboration between the two countries, where an industrialization can happen at a big scale. And just quickly, because Thomas asked me to touch upon this, this is the festival that we started 11 years ago. It's a festival that started around entrepreneurship and now has evolved into open innovation, into access to talent. And today, with these 11 editions, we have a community of around 125,000 people. We have been doing corporate innovation challenges with very big companies from Mexico and from abroad that want to have a connection with organizations and with, most importantly, with the young innovators of our country. We started the summit with a content component where we had, the first year we had Guy Kawasaki, Peter Diamandis, and all of those guys. Through the years, we have hosted the Startup Nation Summit. We have hosted events like Women for Change, and very important speakers. But the most important thing is that we have been part of the story of mostly all of the unicorns of Mexico, and many other companies that have been created and seeded, where we have at some point back in 2014, I think I paid for a plane to bring 45 VCs of California down there to see pitches. And this is the type of interaction that we have been provoking. Now, for the 6 years, we have actively been doing corporate innovation challenges with companies like Heineken, Daikin, that are leaders in their spaces. And now we have a tech exposition or tech fair, plus also an access to talent besides the community component. So I know that Thomas will invite you to both of these events in November and in March of next year. But this is kind of the areas that we touch upon. And this is a great example of collaboration and ecosystem development between private and public universities, but with the participation of government, corporations, entrepreneurs, and all the financial arms behind. So I have some more other slides, but we're going to keep them for the panel later today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.